Welcome back to International Star Media, the Gold Star Standard, at the Gold Star Standard. Reactions, reviews, and news you can use. Once again, I am your host, International Yada, for the records and the dollars. And check it out. Sex work. Adult, consensual sex workers. Not forced into sex work, but doing it by choice. Should it be legal? Should sex works be legal? Should it be decriminalized? Should the Nordic model be put in place to help decriminalize sex work? What is the Nordic model? The Nordic model is to criminalize the buyers, the tricks, the johns. Still criminalize the buyers, but decriminalize the prostitutes. Not really sure how that'll work. To criminalize the buyers and decriminalize the prostitute as far as business would go. How would that work? To help get sex workers out of the business of sex work or prostitution. Consensual sex workers that wanna be in the business of sex work. Why would you help them get out if they don't want to get out? Why would they want help getting out if they made the choice to get in? Bring awareness and education and educational campaigns to the public. Well, let's check it out.
One time, this guy told me that he had thoughts about killing his wife and kids. The fact that we're so vulnerable, in our underwear or naked even, it makes people feel vulnerable themselves to tell us the darkest, deepest stuff. They may have.
She said one time a guy wanted to off his wife and kids, but due to the therapy that she gave him to talking to him, when he didn't have someone else that he felt like he could talk to, talked him down from the ledge, as they say. Should sex work be illegal? Should it be decriminalized?
One time, this guy told me that he had thoughts about killing his wife and kids. The fact that we're so vulnerable, in our underwear or naked even, it makes people feel vulnerable themselves to tell us the darkest, deepest stuff. They may have a lot of shame about it, but the fact that we're whores is what's more shameful than a whore? I can tell anything to.
Right. It truly is topless therapy. I know that not all dancers and sex workers take that approach.
I know. Well, it's hard.
On October 25th, the country's first law that partially decriminalizes sex work went into effect in Maine.
I don't believe that.
So the country's first law to partially decriminalize sex work went in effect in the state of Maine. Very interesting.
When you buy somebody else's body for whatever you want to do with it, to me that's not much short of slavery.
And it's putting voluntary sex workers at odds with.
They putting a lot of fluff, a lot of extra in this. She said when you buy women's bodies to do whatever you want with them. I don't think they paying these women to pour hot coffee on them or something like that. To burn them with forks and stuff like that. No, it's consensual sex between two adults. That's what they talking about. They putting a lot of extras on it, in my opinion.
Advocates for trafficking victims.
I use the term sex work in quotations, but it's sexual exploitation.
They say that those engaging in sexual services are victims. And that does not describe me nor the hundreds, if not thousands of other women I've worked with across.
That's what I was saying. I agree with that. She was trying to say that the women are victims. And like the sex worker said, hundreds, if not thousands of women she know doing it by choice. They do this by choice.
Both Maine and the United States.
Really what I'm known for is a fighter for women's rights, and particularly to end violence against women. That's really been the cornerstone of what I've done for 50, 60 years. I was the one who pushed the very first gay rights bill in the state in 1976. At the time, I didn't know I was a lesbian. Go figure. That's my wife, and I.
Lois Reckitt is the state lawmaker behind the partial decriminalization law that passed back in June. It was her second attempt before her term ends next year.
A young friend of mine who was a police officer in Portland who worked on what they call the track. He came to me one day and said, I can't stand this. We arrest people and they're back right away and nothing changes. And so I said, well, go ahead, tell me what we ought to do about it. He said, I found this Nordic model. I think this is it.
The Nordic model partially decriminalizes prostitution, meaning selling sex is no longer a crime, but buying it is. This is not a step towards full decriminalization, where sex workers and buyers would not be criminalized.
The hope is that we can penalize the buyers, make the fines they...
Yeah, full decriminalization or full legalization of sex work would mean that the buyer would not be penalized, nor the worker. They will just be looked at two consenting adults making an agreement, and that's it. But the Nordic model, which they're trying to bring in, it looks like they started in May, would decriminalize the sex worker, but criminalize the buyer. I'm not sure. Like I said, I'm not sure how that's working.
Pay used to help the women recover and make it possible for them to build new lives.
Before the law was enacted, people caught selling sex for the first time faced a $1,000 fine, up to 6 months in jail, and a misdemeanor charge, which could have serious impacts on job applications, housing, child custody, and much more. The goal with the Nordic model, also known as the equality model, is to eradicate sex work altogether.
I don't think you can say that, I'm doing this because I love doing sex work. First of all, I have not talked.
Not true at all. Like the first woman said, she knows hundreds, if not thousands of women that choose the job of sex work. They choose it.
To an awful lot of people who said that, but I know that people do say that, and I don't believe it. It not only hurts the people who are used, it also hurts every woman in this society.
I really enjoy my job.
So she said women that choose to do sex work hurt other women in society that have nothing to do with it. That I don't see how that makes any sense. But if you can make sense of it, leave it in the comments.
Human beings are social creatures. We need connection. We need intimacy. We need loving, consensual touch in our lives. Pumpkin spice. I have 2 bachelor degrees. I very much wanted to pursue a doctorate. I was very interested in neurobiology.
I never knew that. That's amazing.
Working in laboratories.
Yeah, I was trying to develop this new cancer research drug.
Oh my god, what a hard pivot.
Juliet is 27 years old. We're using the name she uses as a dancer and escort.
A lot of people find me on TikTok and will go follow my different channels, stuff like that, and often reach out on Instagram. So, like I have this person here. When are you free this week? Any chance I come to you now and spend $4,000 to $5,000?
Her friend is also a sex worker.
So she got a potential client willing to spend $4,000 or $5,000 to see her. For 2 consensual adults to come together with an agreement to engage in sex work. With an agreement now. Should that be a crime? Should it be decriminalized? 100% decriminalized? Or should the Nordic model be put into place where the buyer is penalized and the worker is decriminalized. The Nordic model came up out of the Nordic countries. I believe it's Sweden. What's the other country? The Nordic countries. Denmark, Finland, Iceland. Those are some of the Nordic countries. That's where the Nordic model is based out of.
She asked us to hide her face and call her Vivian.
It's essential to my financial stability. It is my income, my lifeline.
Right, and it's not my personal life. The services I give to customers are not things that I'm doing for myself.
Just a job. I believe that's what she was trying to say. It's just a job.
I first heard about Maine's new partial decriminalization legislation in the strip club. A customer pulled up the article online and said, "Hey, look at this. So what do you think? Can we get out of here?" And I was shocked. Partial decriminalization is harmful. It creates an unsafe environment. It criminalizes clients and buyers, and having any portion of us criminalized just further marginalizes us and pushes us underground and isolates us.
So the woman that's a sex worker agrees that it should be fully legal. Sex work should be fully legalized, not decriminalized on one end and criminalized on the other end. She believes it should be fully legalized. I agree.
If a client is concerned about prosecution, they are more likely to scam a provider, not pay them. They are more likely to seek out dangerous locations. They might even be shameful of themselves and therefore treat their provider with violence.
The true scope of the violence against sex workers is severely underreported, especially in areas where prostitution is still criminalized and sex workers avoid going to law enforcement out of fear of arrest. The data we do have shows sex workers who are trans, people of color, migrants, or experiencing poverty face an even greater risk of assaults and murder. And the perpetrators are not just buyers, it's traffickers too.
People are usually brought to me by referral.
Trisha Grant is on the front lines of helping people exploited in the sex trade, which in Maine is mostly girls in their teens and 20s.
I got a message on Messenger from somebody who was looking for help for a 16-year-old who was in the hospital. Her traffickers were from her own community. They were in their 20s. They started selling her that lie of like, you can have a better life, we can give you more. It was a lot of just that manipulation of parental control. And
now the story took a little turn right here, because now they're talking about underage. That should be criminalized. Underage sex workers should not be a part of the sex trade. The work of sex workers. It should not be a part of that. This is for adult consensual sex workers. Women that are 18 or above by law. The legal age is by law. And that choose to do it, not doing it by force, but doing it by choice. Let's continue.
Helping her to remove herself from that. I was trafficked as a 15-year-old. It does hit home a little harder. I was 14 when my son was born, and I was living in my own apartment. I just turned 15, and a friend of mine and I were at Denny's. We're talking about how difficult it was to pay bills and how hard it was to stay in school, and for me, raise my son, and that I was afraid that if I didn't raise him perfect, he was going to be taken away from me. There were two men listening to our conversation, and they approached our table and they had said, "Hey, you know, we overheard your conversation. We have something you might be interested in." And we shrugged shoulders and just say, "Sure, why not?" You know, and they said, "Okay, go to this brown apartment building, go up to the 3rd floor." And when we got up there, they raped us. And when they were done, they gave me a pager and they said, you know, when this pager goes off, you better show up where and when we tell you to, or your son's going to be taken away from you. I did with.
I'm not sure if I understood what she said correctly. But if you are in a situation like this, you should leave. You should leave that situation. Simple as that. Walk away from that situation. The first chance you get, leave a situation where someone kidnapped you and then sent you out to the streets to become a sex worker by force. You should walk away from that situation and find some help. Let's continue.
They told me to do, and that was my life for a year and a half. We were brought to strip clubs. Sometimes we were brought to bachelor parties. We were brought to hotels. We were brought to truck stops. There was a lot of violence. I had somebody who regularly bought me just to strangle me. I personally will never believe that sex work can be work. The majority of the people, even who say that they're out there willingly selling sex, have trauma in their history, have some story that brought them to that place. Would any of us want to force our own children or our siblings or our sisters and brothers, like anybody, into a line of sex work?
It is such a privilege for us to be able to choose our clients.
Say we got full decriminalization, but we don't want legalization because we don't want the regulatory burden.
Right.
So like, does it have a place between being decriminalized and not legalized? Like,
Right, decriminalized but not over-regulated, right? Like
it's a double.
being told when, where, how much to charge, what services to provide, who we are providing it to. That sounds like hell to me.
What I had heard from the Canadian folks, the biggest mistake they made was they didn't train police early enough.
Lois and Tricia have been working together for the last few years on the partial decriminalization law, alongside national trafficking survivor advocates. And in September, they began meeting to figure out how to implement it.
You're in a crunch, Lois, as far as anything that we might want to present as far as emergency bills. We have to get those in.
I think most of you know that my health is in flux right now. I don't know what's going on, except that my cancer's back. I'm trying to make sure I do is get as much as I can get done, because I'm likely to start on chemo right away.
I wish I had more time. I hope I will have more time, but I don't know. It's the uncertainty right now that's hard. You know, I could be here 10 years from now. You know, and I might not be here a year from now. I don't know. So you can't plan ahead, you just work. Basically what I'm doing is I'm trying to find every place in state government where a program is happening that could be applicable to this population if only the women knew about it, and if only the people who are managing these programs knew not only how to find the people and help the people, but to do it in a way that is not patronizing or mean-spirited or why the heck are you doing this anyway kind of attitude. So I'm trying to educate both ends of the spectrum, the recovering prostitutes to trust the system and to make the system work for them. This bill is a way that I feel like it's my mark on the state statutes that can help women. This one feels like one that would not have happened if I had not been a bull moose trying to make this happen.
Should it be decriminalized? Should sex work be legal? A lot of questions and answers with that. International Star Media, the Gold Star Standard, at the Gold Star Standard. Reactions, reviews, and news you can use. Once again, I am your host, International Yada, for the records and the dollars. 2025, we all the way live, and we will see you on the next one.